No cambia. No lo sé si es que va lento, pero no cambia. De abajo, donde te pone el cuadradito ese de pasarlo allí, no te lo hace.
A ver ahora.
Ahora sí, ahora sí.
Ok, ahora
Vale.
estoy se ve mi pantalla, está bien.
Sí.
Entonces,
Vale. ¿Pruebo yo a poner la mía o te acordarás cómo se pone?
espera que ahora que hice. Oh, espera que hice algo mal.
Ahora veo tu pantalla del ordenador.
Sí, ahora es que ves mi pantalla y no, es que hice algo mal. No sé cómo quitarlo. Espera, porque ya sé cómo se comparte. ¿Necesitas compartir tu pantalla?
Sí,
O... Vale,
sí.
entonces compártela. Yo ya quité, yo ya ahora sé cómo se hace. No hay ningún
Vale,
problema.
voy a probar yo. Vale. ¿Se ve entera?
Sí, se ve entera.
Vale. Pero claro, a ver si
Se
no.
ve como slides. O sea, se ve como slides. Ahora tú pon modo
Vale.
presentación.
Bien. Solo que claro, hago así y no veo.
No ves, tal cual.
No veo. Entonces tengo que admitir a todos primero
Sí,
y luego ponerlo.
y
Espera.
ponerlo, sí, tal cual.
Vale. Ok. Pues voy a empezar a admitir a la gente.
Es que estoy doble. Es verdad que estoy doble y no
Sí,
sé en
bueno,
cuál.
da igual. Pasa nada. Voy a empezar a abrir.
Vale.
Just look at this time difference thing. Oh, something is happening now.
Yes, they just let you in.
Oh,
Just submit. Wait.
Hi, Maria Jose. I just went down and I reconnected, so you might need to make me a presenter again. Sorry.
Ok. Dame. Ok. Now.
It might take a bit, but I'm still as a attendee. Now I'm presenter. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. Some minutes and then we start.
Bonjour. It is not going to be translated in French. Sorry,
No, stop.
I can
Sorry.
barely. I can speak something, but barely to communicate in a scientific way. If you want to introduce yourself, telling where you and where you are from in the chat, it's going to be fine, because once I start the presentation, I'm not seeing anyone.
No, we did that one doesn't count. We did too late. You have one.
Okay.
Did you see at the beginning how much we did it yesterday?
Empresa. Que también hayas, eso también que yo he dicho, bueno, vamos a evaluar. Claro, yo lo que...
Okay, to start. Good morning, everyone.
Espérate.
And welcome to the EU-Africa PerMed webinar, the role of the health technology assessment under the personal medicine approach. Please mute to your microphone when speaking, because we need to reduce the background noise. Use the chat to communicate with the other participants, also for the question to the speaker. And please avoid multitasking during the webinar. After the talk, you can use the raise hand to indicate that you want to ask something to the speaker. Please mute your micro. Well, I am Maria Jose Ruiz. I am the scientific officer of the Directorate of Research and Innovation of the Italian Ministry of Health and member of the EU-Africa PerMed Consortium. We will start the webinar with a brief introduction of the consortium, followed by the Dr. Gilardino's speech about health technology assessment on personal medicine. Let me start this presentation with the introduction of the definition of the personal medicine adopted by the consortium and how it is transforming healthcare. For our consortium, personal medicine refers to a medical model using characterization of individual phenotypes and genotypes for tailoring the right therapeutic strategy for the right person at the right time and to determine the predisposition to disease and or to deliver timely and targeted prevention. Of course, this new concept of medicine is transforming healthcare by tailoring medical care to each individual's unique genetic, environmental, and lifestyle factors. In this way, health technology assessment is a key issue for the healthcare system. You can see in this slide our consortium. This initiative is not an initiative for funding research, but is an important step for the research on personal medicine because it's a coordination and support research action under the Horizon 2020 framework program. You can see the distribution of our partners in Europe, in Spain, France, and Italy, and in the different parts of the Africa regions. You are free to contact every of our partners if you need more information about our project. And let me know what is the main objective of this consortium, of this initiative. Our main objective is to integrate African countries into the International Consortium on Personal Medicine, and in this way to contribute to a successful implementation of the personal medicine in a global context. Of course, we want that the African countries, the African scientific community, reach projects and programs with the collaboration with Europe and Africa to strengthen bilateral science, technology, and innovation relations in this area. Our project will run for 4 years, starting in 2021. The currently landscape of personal medicine is very broad. You can see that here that there are different coordination and support actions, not only with Africa like this, but also with China, with Latin America, with the European regions and other specific focus of these initiatives. And also we have on board an era PerMed, that is the initiative for funding research. And all this family of personal medicine will feed the new European Partnership for Personal Medicine next year. And regarding the main objective of this consortium, you can consult this in this slide, but today we will focus in the objective 5 and 6, that is to carry out the capacity building and training activities addressing relevant personal medicine issues for Africa, and in this way to contribute to raising awareness and benefits for regional collaboration in order to advance in the implementation of personal medicine approach. And in this way, the Work Package 5, that is the work package where we want to increase the personal medicine research collaboration with the training and capacity building activities, is mainly focused in these initiatives: education and training activities for supporting the translation of the research into the practice, dissemination good practice examples in relation not only with the implementation of the personal medicine approach, but also for the harmonization of the personal medicine practice, not only in research, but also in the implementation, funding, and disseminated standards. And of course, to facilitate the bi-regional research networks for synergies and for putting together interdisciplinary competencies. During this, the first years of the project, we have identified with the collaboration of all the partners, the different needs for the training in personal medicine in Africa. You can see in this slide the main focus, the main blocks of these needs. The basic genetic and genomics, the bioinformatics and data analysis, the biobanking and sample collection, the clinical trials and research ethics, and healthcare policy and economics, all linked to the more important point, that is the communication and patient engagement in these activities. Focus in this starting the focus in this disease that are in oncology, infection disease, cardiovascular, and rare disease, taking into account the three main pillars of prevention, diagnosis, and treatment. Our target, or our main target, are the researchers, the healthcare workers, patients, of citizens, and policymakers. And we have identified these main lines to raise personal medicine awareness. The first, the basic genetic or genomics. In this way, we have started with our first webinar, who was on oncology and genomics. The clinical trials and research ethics. In this way, we have already organized 2 series of webinars on ethics, and our first on-site main event on personal medicine and harmonization of the standards. And regarding health policy and economic, we have already here in our fifth webinar on HTA introduction. You can see in this slide an image of the different webinars that we have already organized with the collaboration of our partners. And the information of our first on-site training events on standards in personal medicine in South Africa last February. The lines we want to continue is the bioinformatics and data analysis, and biobanking and sample collection, and communication and patient engagement. This will be our next webinars. And here is the point that we would like to highlight, that we need the collaboration of you, because we want to continue the identification of the specific topic of issue. We need your suggestion to improve our training events. We want to identify knowledgeable speakers in Africa. Then it's important for us to receive suggestions, and also if you are volunteers to be part of our training events. It's important also the promotion of the training and information session, and it is important for us to reach all the African scientific community and to create a networking with you. Then your collaboration in this way is important. And also we need to evaluate our training activities and our webinars. And it's important to know your opinion. For this, we will ask you to fill up the survey that we will send you after the webinar. Sorry, because I am accepting people. And now, thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoy our webinar. And you can find here the different social media and email on where you can contact us. Thank you for your attention. And now it is really my pleasure to introduce you Dr. Ramiro Gilardino, medical doctor and an expert on health technology assessment. He has over 13 years of experience in the field and is currently Global Health Technology Assessment and Access Policy Lead and a pharmaceutical executive. He has developed in her academic life multiple tactics focused on patient-centered value analysis, outcomes research, clinical data record analysis, economic modeling of medical technology, with position in consulting, pharmaceutical and global organization leading health technology assessment. Affordability tactics and strategies, global value access and pricing teams. Dr. Gilardino is here today to share the experience on health technology assessment and how it can be used to improve personal medicine and patient care. Welcome, Dr. Gilardino. Thank you very much for your support in this initiative, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm not seeing myself, so let me know if my camera is not seen. And I'm gonna start to share my screen. Hopefully, this might work. So is my full screen version
Yes, it's perfect.
available?
Thank you. Yes,
It's in
okay.
presentation mode. Okay, perfect. So I can see anyone right now. So if you raise your hand or if you do something, I'm not gonna be able to see. So for housekeeping notes, if you have a question, you can write in the chat or raise your hand. Keep your hand raised, and after my presentation, I'm gonna return to the webinar base, stop sharing screen, and we can address all the questions. And it wasn't the purpose of that. Someone moved my screen, so sorry, that was not the idea. Let me stop sharing again. Okay. Is my screen now is in presentation mode, or it's
No, it's not in presentation mode.
that's a pity. I might try again. I don't want. Okay. Okay, so
Now it's
yeah.
okay.
Okay, thank you so much for the invitation and for the warm introduction. So Maria Jose, I don't know what is happening. I cannot advance my slides. That's annoying. Okay, I changed into a presentation from another source. So are you seeing my presentation mode or just my slides?
Your slides only. But maybe you can do this bigger.
Yeah, it's gonna be easier because I don't know what is happening. So is my screen? I can make it 200%. So probably, and apologize if you cannot see. Okay, so yeah. So for today, and thank you for the introduction. I'm not an expert in HTA, but I do realize that I love to research on value assessment, and HTA is closely related to value assessment. So I was asked to provide a bit introduction about what is HTA. What is the aim of HTA? Is everybody mute? Okay. And how HTA and value assessment could support personalized medicine approaches. So as Maria Jose said, I'm employed by MSD International. However, my company does not provide any financial support for this activity, neither in the funding organization like EU Horizon 2020. And this presentation is being held on my own capacity. So many of you might know what is HTA according to the recently new, it's almost 3 years. Health technology assessment definitions, as you might see here in my screen, is a multidisciplinary process that uses explicit methods to determine the value of a health technology at different points in its life cycle. And this is something new. And the purpose is to inform decision-making, just to promote equitable, efficient, and high-quality healthcare systems. So this is a very broader and comprehensive definition because we incorporate value, incorporate the life cycle, meaning different stage of this health technology, and of course, they inform the decision-making just to promote an efficient healthcare system. So this is something to point out that in some countries, they call HTA a regulatory, but this is maybe a misperception or a wording issue because regulatory is something different as HTA or value assessment. As you might see here in this chart, I'm not going to provide so much detail, but in regulatory approval, there is a national organization or in the case of the European Union, the EMA under a centralized authority or a root that is in charge, and a primary role is the market authorization to be available in countries for selling or for distribution. And the decision role basically is if the product do more good than harm based on safety, efficacy, and quality. So this is the main research areas or research questions on regulatory approval. But on HTA and afterwards coverage and reimbursement, and this is because in some countries there is no HTA, so HTA is being held by the payer. Usually we try to answer if this product is safety, but also if provides some relative effectiveness, and also if it's improved our healthcare systems in terms of different elements of value, like economic value, and broader elements of value, like you are seeing here, social, ethical, legal, or organizational. Another element that I want to point out is sometimes HTA is seen as cost effectiveness analysis. And it is something that is not truly correct because An HTA report or an HTA process could include an economic evaluation, like the cost effectiveness assessment or a cost utility assessment, as part of the evaluation of the process and determining the economic value. However, this is not mandatory, and you can assess a technology, for example, from other perspectives: organizational value, social value, or the clinical value or the clinical domains. So if a report does not contain economic perspective or does not contain a cost effectiveness analysis, of course, it could be also an HTA report. On the other hand, you can perform a cost effectiveness analysis as part of the requirement for determining if a product is better or provides an additional criteria or value or an additional benefit than standard of care, just internally and not part of an HTA process. So that's are my two main disclosures and main difference I wanted to point out before going into it. So I took this from INATA, and INATA is the international network of HTA agencies. And I think we have here Muna Jamaledin from Tunisia, that is part of INATA board. And hi, Muna, it's nice to see you after some time. As you might see here, we have a lot of organizations that comprises full independent HTA organizations, departments inside Ministry of Health or HTA units run by Ministry of Health or payers, and some like-minded organizations, independent, but that conduct some health technology assessment reports that are either commissioned by a government or a payer, or are commissioned by the industry, or are done by the sake of their own purpose. This is the case, for example, of the Institute for Economic and Clinical Review, which the acronym is ICER in the United States, but this is not incremental cost effectiveness ratio. It's ICER as known in the US. So we have a bunch of HTA processes and HTA agencies and a bunch of different structures. However, the mission and the vision seems to be mostly the same. However, if we turn up this map, these bodies are in different stages of development, and basically because HTA started early in the US and it was withdrawn, and then it was incorporated mostly in Europe across different agencies, and then the UNETA consortium was established by 2009, 2010. And other countries follow the path, even in Asia Pacific, in Latin America, or in Middle East and Africa, in this case. So, sorry, because the graphic design is not so good, but those in white basically is that the system is in development. But for example, in Brazil, we might say that we have HTA for a while, since 2011. In Colombia, almost at that time as well, and in Tunisia is already running a very good organization as well, like in Ukraine, for example, inside the Ministry of Health. So I came from Latam. I'm Argentinian by nature. And I always have in my heart how HTA evolved in my region. And this is to provide a bit of flavor of what happened using a model created by Professor Banda, basically from inception, development, and moving forward. And you can see more about HTA in Latin America in this paper we published in Value in Health. And as you may see here, first we started establishing some regional initiatives, some units, small units in the Ministry of Health at the time, where other countries in the world were establishing their networks. And then mostly in between the 20s to 2010s, some activities, independent activities related to HTA, started to be carried out mostly at government offices, in some small institutions in the region. And everything exploded by 2010 when we started creating national organizations like CONITEC in Brazil and the IETS in Colombia by 2011, as well some offices within the Ministry of Health, like in the Argentinian CONITEC between 2017, 2018, and also networks like the Registrazi, who was established by 2011 as well, and a lot of HTA organizations and Ministry of Health and payers are participating of this network. So this is a sense of flavor of what's happened in a region where still HTA is immature and it's under development. The other point I want to share is something on how HTA can be related within the healthcare decision-making process, because we saw in the definition that it was to improve the decision-making process. And this framework basically is taken from a paper published by the eSport HTA Council back in 2019, where you can see here several decision-making steps, what questions you need to address, and how the HTA process might support the addressing of these research questions. And I'm not going into detail, but of course covers policy questions, and of course covers decision rules and implementation and monitoring, basically monitoring the impact and the transparency of the health technology assessment, a topic that currently is in the edge, basically how to evaluate the impact of HTA, not the impact of the HTA reports, if the impact of the agency is according to the remits into their healthcare systems, if it's transparent, and if it is valuable. Because of course, this includes a lot of funding to run a HTA process, and agency includes funding from governments, and there is a need to understand if this funding allocated are properly, or we might need to allocate more funding. If we compare with the regulatory process itself, we see a lot of gap between funding for regulatory purposes versus funding for a value assessment or HTA. Then another topic is I want to raise is inside the HTA remit. It's a broad assessment frameworks, and you might see here basically some countries with own established processes and bodies and agencies. And for example, here we pointed out the ICER case in which there is a non-governmental agency, but these ICER reports are being taken by payers, especially by commercial and private payers in the US to assess the value and decide or determine coverage and reimbursement for new technologies. So here you might see the different domains. So we see some countries mostly based on the clinical domains, other countries supporting clinical and economic evaluation, and others mostly focus on the affordability, which could be addressed through the budget impact analysis, or an economic evaluation plus a budget impact to determine the willingness to pay. And this is also in related to the different healthcare system remites. So here is a difference between major European countries, and in my next slide, I'm gonna show some changes that are moving forward. But here you might see some countries driven more on the cost effectiveness and the value base of the product, like in NICE, because NICE in the latest framework incorporated the value-based perspective. Other countries are mostly driven by the clinical efficacy and the clinical value, especially incorporating patient preferences, while others are highly decentralized and incorporate mostly or are mostly driven by the budget impact analysis, meaning the affordability or ability to pay and if it is worth paying. Besides that, in Europe, so since January 2021, since December 2021, there is the HTA regulation law in place, a process that it took almost 20 years. So because the European Commission started to discuss this by early 2000, to see how European countries, the 27 European members, can collaborate and work together on a joint process. And what was agreed is that from 2025 onwards, a joint clinical assessment will be carried out across the 27 member states, determined by an assessor and a co-assessor. And this is going to be under the European Commission mandate, and the DG Sante is going to be acting as the secretariat. For now, there is the UNETA, there's a typo, the UNETA 21 is acting as a secretariat until September this year, because they are creating the structures, they are writing the methodologies reports. But since October, the European Commission is going to take the secretariat of this work. During 2024, they are going to be acting on the implementation acts, on how to conduct the joint clinical assessment, and how to set the rules for incorporating a broader perspective, meaning stakeholders beyond traditional governments and payers, mostly clinicians and patient representatives. And this is built on the foundation on the UNETA Joint Action 3. So under Joint Action 3, a couple of joint clinical assessment projects were developed, and this is built also in the previous actions on UNETA. So UNETA was established by 2009, and basically the first goal and the first output, high-level output, is the development of the UNETA core model, which is the first framework on how to incorporate and evaluate technologies using several domains, 8 domains. And from that domains, it was agreed that the clinical assessment domain, the evaluation of the clinical benefit, is the one that is going to be assessed, centralized, and then each of the 27 member states might assess their internal domains, meaning economic domain and society and organizational perspectives. But during this time of discussions, you may see here, and I've been for a while in this slide, a lot of collaborations and regional and multi-country collaborations involving a lot of citizens, and this collaboration aim for even horizon scanning of technologies, even doing joint centralized purchasing and procurement process, price negotiation pilots, and even on joint clinical assessment, and then purchasing, procurement and purchasing processes like those in finals. The latest one was announced last year, which multi-country collaboration involving Australia, Canada, Ireland, and the United Kingdom. And we don't know a lot of this yet, but it's a sharing model, working in improving efficiency gaps, and they also are planning to conduct joint clinical assessment across them. So this is to let you know how we started and how we are evolving. So we are evolving in a more collaborative way. We are evolving more into focusing on the value and looking what's happened externally. So probably countries outside the European Union might start looking on what is happening in the EU with the EU HTA regulation, and might try to mimic some kind of activities or processes according to their own capabilities. So this is to provide a flavor of how we are on HTA. Then I want to incorporate some definitions, because we saw in the overall HTA definitions that is to determine the value. So and this is basically what I'm presenting about the value and the value dimensions. And value in healthcare is very broad, basically. And you have here what is the definition of value in healthcare, but it's basically what I want to pay or not to pay to obtain something, meaning the opportunity cost. And always we are doing this kind of value assessment in our real life when we go for our daily shop in the supermarket, when deciding a premium brand versus other brand, when deciding to purchase a better car or a new car with some enhancements rather than other one. So people is continuously challenged about the willingness to pay or the willingness to forego to do something, to obtain something. But in health, it's something difficult to measure because the value changes over time. And also depends on the perspective of who is measuring the value. If is who pay, meaning the payer, if a regulator like a government or health funding, or if it's the patient, because in some countries there are still a lot of healthcare burden or patient burden because of the out-of-pocket costs. So this is why it's tend to be difficult, and to support this decision making, some value frameworks were created, and I'm gonna explain afterwards what is meaning of a value framework. But you can see on this side of the screen something very well known, which is the eSport Value Flower, and this is an adaptation. The eSport Value Flower was developed back to 2017. And as you can see here, it incorporates core elements of value. So core elements of value are those elements of value usually measured in traditional negotiations, like the cost and the benefits measured by QALYs. But then also authors incorporated other dimension, which includes ethical, society, cultural, and legal perspectives, and as well the environmental. And this include a wider implication for patient, caregivers, and the family, and the entire society, or the consumers, basically, how it's a term that it's called quite often said in Australia, for example. And you can see here in this value flower in these lines on which are the traditional payer elements or payer perspective in the value assessment, and with red are those that include a broader or holistic perspective. How we can merge these value frameworks or this value definition into HTA? Well, one side we have here the definition of health technology, and personalized medicine could be included as a health technology itself. Maria Jose provided the definition of personalized medicine for the consortium, and I'm going to provide some definitions related to HTA. Then this is a definition on how these dimensions of value are assessed using the HTA broader or new HTA definition. So these dimensions of value are assessed by examining the intended and unintended consequences of using this technology compared with the current alternatives. And you see here the dimensions that include the clinical, safety, cost, economics implications, ethical, social, cultural, legal issues, and organizational and environmental aspects. Part of these dimensions are coming from what I mentioned about the core model developed by UNETA. And the overall value varies according to the perspective taken if payers, governments, and citizens are involved, and the decision context. And it can be, this process is systematic, formal and transparent, that use methodologies, for example, cost effectiveness analysis. So this is why we are using a method to a process like HTA to consider the best available evidence. In this case, economic, but we can do a systematic literature review and to assess basically the clinical value of this technology. And it happened at different points. So we can start thinking right now on HTA during the pre-market, at market authorization, but also to understand is what we invested 3 years ago is still valuable for my healthcare systems, for my system, or for my society. That's mean doing HTA in later stages of the life cycle, and mostly using to disinvest in some technologies, because we may have a new technology that provides better value for healthcare system, and we might need to replace that. But the definition of value, of course, differs by the healthcare system, the country, and the decision context based on the agency. So here you can see a couple of countries where some elements of value noted here, and how they are addressing, if they are addressing or no specifically. So most of the countries are interested to see unmet needs, of course, because if this treatment, this therapy, this technology comes to solve a highly unmet need, they might be worth considering. They want to assess the clinical effectiveness, the comparative clinical effectiveness, meaning this provide an additional clinical benefit from what it is currently. And let's think some potential applications on personalized medicine with the current standard of care. And of course, most of the personalized medicine approaches might have better patient profiling, providing potential better outcomes, but we need to understand if they are still valuable compared with current products, current therapies, or current standard of care. Other countries assess also the value for the value for money and comparing an economic or including an economic perspective like cost effectiveness. Other includes the affordability measured by the budget impact. And what is important for me is that the patient input is not still so considered even inside the European Union and in Latin America, but you have here some countries where patients have formal input in the process, like in Australia, in Canada, and well, in the US with ICER sometimes called for comments, and patients, organizations and patient representatives can incorporate some comments according to the evaluation. And then we see the part of the novel elements of value, and most of the agencies or HTA bodies in the world are not considered an holistic value on the basically beyond the traditional direct medical cost. So they are not considering non-medical direct cost. For example, daycare, sick care, transportation, the productivity, and something intangible like is pain, suffering, value of hope. So this is still ongoing. And to complement, this is basically a research incorporating three reviews carried out in the last 6 years, and where authors determine if payer or HTA are assessing novel elements of value in their decision, in the decision-making process. So we have basically from US and ex-US, and as we see across basically the different authors, most of them assess the core value elements measured on the clinical effectiveness, efficacy, and safety or side effects. The cost per quality to determine the value of this technology, the economic values, the technology, and other potential elements or new elements are being covered partially. For example, the dignity, the site of care, the real option value, the value of hope of different first treatment option or first line option, and the severity of the disease. So still a lot of hesitancy on HTA, on payers, on incorporate broader and novel or societal value perspective. So then I was asked to provide some thoughts about if HTA fits for personalized medicine. And this is a definition I took from the banner from the consortium. And HTA on personalized medicine focuses on assessing the effectiveness, safety, and cost effectiveness of diagnostic tools and treatments that are tailored to individual patients based on their genetic and environmental and lifestyle factors. And it can provide important information to support decision-making in the adoption, funding, and the further use in the clinical practices. So mostly HTA focus on the value assessment of diagnostic companions, tailored treatments, and gene therapy to basically to cure a patient or to improve the quality of life. But what's happened basically if this is fit for purpose or if HTA fits for personalized medicine? In my opinion, it's still unfit. Or I don't know if the word is unfit. It means, in my opinion, is not fully recognized. And this is because, as we see across the different slides I've shown, the approaches are mostly focused on the economic value and driven by willingness to pay and the ability to pay, and focusly on reimbursement. Reimbursement process on drugs are typically based on population. And when we speak about a rare disease or certain specific condition, this population could be small and might not be representative of the entire population. Then personalized medicine sometimes leads to restricted population, as I said, or individual type of care. And part of these research questions are not fully addressed across the economic evaluation or the economic assessment or the value assessment of personalized medicine. And if we might need to assess what's happened in the past, agencies' experience was mostly focused on diagnostic tests or companion diagnostics. For example, those to assess the response for Herceptin, for example, in breast cancer. So mostly for basically for biomarkers and in not fully fully undertaking to determine the entire genetic pathway. Maria Jose mentioned that the International Consortium on Personalized Medicine, or PerMed, is working across, or is working across different partners, and it's piloting some projects. And one group inside the International Consortium on Personalized Medicine is the PerMed. HECO means health economics, and this group is trying to address some economic perspective of the personalized medicine. And they came with some interesting papers about the value of personalized medicine and how economic techniques and value assessment could support a personalized medicine approach. But I always want to, or I like to use a framework back to 2019 called the Value of Diagnostic Information Frameworks. And this was created, it was a multi-stakeholder initiative led by EDMA, at the time was EDMA, now is part of MedTech Europe, the trade organization that advocates for diagnostics and for medical devices, some academics and clinician and patient groups. And this framework specifically incorporates patients, providers, healthcare or clinician itself, and the entire healthcare system. And those are the core pillars, but others are impacted indirectly, like citizens, carers, and the society. And you might see here some core domains for each of these people. So you might, for patient, the clinical benefit domain, in the healthcare system, the efficiencies or improving economic efficiencies or pathway, the public health benefit, into the providers, meaning a hospital or healthcare institution, operational efficiencies like turnaround, operational cost, quality, and for clinicians, basically facilitate the patient management. And So, and this is to include an example of this body approach at a system level. So here is the value of deciding with greater certainty and included rapid diagnostic information. For example, an example that includes rapid diagnostic information that rule out bacterial infection can change the original decision or the original treatment pathway to administer antibiotics. This is the same for example, a biomarker that might change the risk or might address if a response to treatment would be effective or no, and might save time, might save resources, both clinical and economic resources, and might help patients to determine their own decision or how patient and clinician could develop an informed decision. And of course, part of this diagnostic information is to support healthcare system in making better resource use. So, and here you can see a couple of points on the patient level, on healthcare system level, and patient outcomes are facilitated by diagnostic information. So, for example, I mentioned the biomarker, and knowing a health status or prognosis might empower patient choices about their own health status, about the choices, and also further discussions based on reproductive, meaning if I know that I'm carrying a gene that might be propense to develop certain disease or inherit certain condition, I might decide to have further child, meaning get into reproduction. Meaning work, I might decide if I need to continue working or if I might step down to work or work less, retirement, long-term health, and also to plan end-of-life management. Basically, this is something that the value of knowing and deciding. And this is a personal experience. I lost a colleague due to metastatic breast cancer during the holiday season. And we were preparing a presentation that is going to be held during this year in ISPOR, in ISPOR 2023 at Boston. And we were discussing about these value elements and how these value elements are being taken into the society. And she came with something that I still got this email because, hey, HTA are not considering the value of knowing and the value of deciding, especially when you know that nothing is enough or you don't have enough options enough options in your life. Meaning, she was considering her own perspective on the disease, and she was considering that she was running out of options. And you can decide what you can do, basically. You can enter into a new clinical trial or spend more time with your family. So this is how personalized approaches and incorporating personalized approaches and society perspective or perspective beyond the traditional disease might help patients and the family to get better informed decisions. And of course, for healthcare systems, we have, and we talk about, because if we want to talk about cost, they might help to reduce cost related to hospital stay, outpatient visit. They might reduce costs due to early identification and prevention. And one of the examples is back to 2020 in the starting of the pandemic, everybody requires a confirmatory test due to a real-time PCR for SARS-CoV-2, sorry. And by 2021, and with the quickly R&D, we have available and rapid antigen test, and it changed basically. It changed the pathway where you incorporate a rapid antigen test, and this started to be the first standard of care. So you got an antigen test, and then you need to go for a PCR for confirmatory. By 2022, probably at the later stage of this situation, some countries determine if your rapid antigen test is positive, you are positive and you don't require further testing, just isolation. So this is how approach with increased R&D support resource allocation and resource decision making, and maximize, of course, the cost effect. So how we can use the value flower, the flower I mentioned like 7 slides ago. So there are some elements that could be used in a broader perspective and could be applied for a personalized approach. So the fear of contagion, I'm not spend a lot because we have these examples with the COVID, but at the time of the creation, they were using the example of the Zika, because Zika virus was on the edge in some countries at that time. But on severity of disease, of course, there might be greater willingness to pay for more severe diseases beyond the quality loss. So this is why for some therapies, the quality thresholds established by some HTA agencies are not the traditional ones. So even in countries where there is no threshold, the 3 GDP per capita threshold might not be applicable for a certain rare disease or gene therapy or an orphan drug. The another one is the value of hope. That basically, this is something important because as we know, some patients are willing to sacrifice life expectancy, meaning length of life, for the change of a cure, basically. So it's okay, you can get cured, but for some of the adverse events, you can get premature die, meaning it's a balance. Okay, I can be cured, but also there is a burden of premature death. I'm willing to take or to forego. So this is a value conversation. So I prefer declining my healthcare status and living 2 years, or I prefer to enter into a trial that is, or enter in a drug which potentially is curative, but the risk of dying prematurely or dying during the first year are higher. So, and this is a preference discussion, meaning what the patient prefers. Then, of course, there are some more system level, like the insurance value, including financial risk protection and health risk protection. And of course, now for affordability, to match the affordability, there are a lot of initiatives, including public-private partnerships, even to develop companion diagnostics, biomarkers, but also to fund and to improve the access to unserved populations to these technologies. So it's not only that the governments need to fund, or the payers need to fund this innovation, it is also that there are potential partnership with academic institutions, with donors, with research and development organizations to work together on a more sustainable approach to facilitate the access to these personalized approaches. And then, of course, we call the value of known, and we have this example of the value of diagnostic information, so meaning value of prognosis and value of diagnostics. So this is how a personalized approach using elements of value could support health technology assessment, or how health technology assessment using novel elements of value could support a personalized approach. However, I want to say that this is also in development and is still immature as well. This paper, I think this paper is back 2020, so it's a couple of years ago, examining how value assessment frameworks use with an HTA process for some omnic technologies and how they are adopted basically by their HTA agencies. So 22 value frameworks addressing generic or genomic technologies and evaluating the analytical and clinical validity, and also additional clinical domains. So you can see the clinical utility domains here. You can see the clinical validity domains here, analytical validity, and a broader and ethical, legal, and society implications. And from the 45 health technology assessment reports using that frameworks, and included these elements, for example, MammaPrint, Oncotype, diagnostics, EndoPredict, and Prosigma, and other genomic technology, we see that most of the technology assessment reports assess the clinical effectiveness, the cost and the economic evaluation, and addressing a health problem and determining the clinical efficacy and the safety. However, just basically 30%, I must say, address broader elements in the value, like ethical analysis, organizational impact, organizational aspects, and social impact. So still, it's something like, do as I say, but don't as I do. Basically, they want to address broader elements of value, but they are not doing in the real life. So for me, and my personal opinion is that still is not fit for purpose. And we need, first of all, we need to standardize or basically discuss how we want to go through with the HTA processes and HTA approach in a more holistic perspective, in a more broader perspective, incorporating broader elements of value, and then assessing if this fits for purpose with current personalized medicine approach or with genetic testing, companion diagnostics. And basically, this is in line on what the PerMed consortium thinks. So this is a guidance. So this paper is published in 2021, is authored by the PerMed, and it tries to provide an harmonization guidance to improve economic evaluations of personalized medicine. And there is a topic, a dedicated section for elements of value, especially for additional elements of value. And this session said that quality insufficiently captures the full value of intervention. This is true. They also acknowledge the is for value flower, and a concept that it was suggested is the personal utility, which is a generalized use either to describe the value of knowledge, the value of know, as I mentioned before, or as an umbrella term for non-health outcomes to that individual might value by themselves. And patients might indeed value outcomes of healthcare beyond increased health. So they are pointing out that these value elements are needed, but they raise several concerns. Most of these concerns were addressed on the methodology to capture the elements of value. Yes, HTA requires being broader, but also requires that new methodologies to capture the value of hope, to measure the society perspective beyond the traditional cost per quality being developed. So it's the egg and the chicken question. And on the other side, it argues that in some cases where innovative methods are proposed, HTA organizations still are conservative and hesitant to change the reference case or to change their analytic question. So this is to point out two perspectives, one from the PerMed perspective and one outside the PerMed. So key points to keep discussing, because I think I'm closing my presentation, but we might have a good discussions about this topic on. So value assessment plays a promising role in sustaining the access to innovative therapies, including personalized and gene therapy and rare diseases, and decision rules to grant the coverage are still based on traditional valuation, the cost and the benefits. So this is the mismatch. We see something that it's potential promising, but the rules are still based on strong elements like the cost and the benefits. Societal perspective, caregiver burden, value of hope are broader elements that can or could be able to demonstrate the long-term value of a personalized approach and rewarding the investment in these curative or promising technologies. And how this could be support the proper value proposition is with early economic modeling, also starting economic modeling economic analysis, even at the early stage in the research and development process, might narrow the delay in the time of access, because at the time of having the dossier or at the time of having our phase 3 trial, we may have also confirmatory evidence about the economic value or the broader value of this product. But again, methodologies are still not out there and requires further exploration. So thank you so much. And I'm gonna stop sharing, and hopefully we might have some questions.
Thank you very much, Ramiro. This is a very nice presentation and very structured presentation. I have a question for you.
Sorry, I see
Yes.
that someone couldn't see my slide. Hopefully is something solved because someone might step in. So I'm looking the chat right now. But
Okay, yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, if we have questions. I'm not seeing question in the chat or raised hands,
Okay.
but do you want to start, Maria Jose?
Yes, you said that the patient voice is or input is not completely included in the HTA, and in your opinion, what can be the way to include the patient perspective or the patient input in the value decisions? How is your opinion in this?
Well, yes, the patient is not fully included. And I may have two opinions. So one is that the patient is who knows their disease, their conditions, and how they live. But what is happening is that most of the patients are not educated to share that perspective. So, and all of us are going to be patient at some time of our life. And depending our literacy, so I'm a clinician, I know how to share my experience. I do know how to make choices. Other populations, or especially underserved populations, might not be basically able to do that. So first of all, what is needed is to educate patients. Educate patients on how to communicate their feelings, how to communicate their preferences, and then incorporate this into the HTA process or into the decision-making process. So in Europe, the UPATI Foundation and the EPF, UPATI started like 15 years ago, and the UPATI is not only for HTA, it's to incorporate the patient perspective across the entire drug development, meaning the patient perspective at the clinical stage, preclinical and clinical stage, and also part of the modules on the UPATI patient course are including on how patients can be incorporated on the preferences in HTA processes. So this is one example, and the upcoming HTA regulation established that stakeholders might need to be incorporated during the same clinical assessment of the new technologies. Stakeholders, not only patients, but also clinicians. What we might need to still is train and decide who are the best suitable to be represented. If it is a patient, if it's a patient representative, which is a patient that is being trained, it's something, a patient that has knowledge of the disease and knowledge to communicate, or a patient advocate, which is something different. It's a person that advocates, but it's a person that is educated. It's a person with some type of health literacy that advocates on beyond of someone.
Yes, I agree with you, because we need the vision of the patient, maybe the patient of the vision of the patient that this expert is more linked to the clinician, that it is difficult to find a line of the or differentiation of between these.
Yeah, and there is a question in the chat, especially the formal patient input. So formal patient input is basically there are several activities that can be carried out. So patient committee meetings. So NICE, for example, has a patient committee that provides inputs on the technologies that are under assessment. NICE are in the case in the United Kingdom, that is outside the European Union. For the UHTA regulation, one of the methodologies that were under public consultation last year was the guidance, basically the template on how the patient provide the input. So this is not a simple call for comment. So this should be a standardized process where you develop a template, the patient groups fill that template, and it collective, analyze comprehensive, and address all the issues raised by the patient population.
You have another question?
Yes, I'm seeing. So
For Sonia. Okay.
Yeah, from Sonia. So Sonia was asking how I see personalities mismatching evolving and how the societal value could be measured and explored. Well, I see complex because I see things are changing. We are moving. We are moving on better value assessment, or we are moving on a more holistic or centralized clinical assessment. However, the clinical assessment does not resolve the society perspective. The society perspective is broader, and I see that currently there is a budget pressure and a need to improve the healthcare system efficiencies that might delay this holistic value. So it's a question of the egg of the chicken, because decision makers might realize that including a societal perspective and an holistic value might also improve healthcare system inefficiencies and improve the economic burden related to healthcare. But we are still attached to the budget impact. We are still attached on the cost specifically. I have a question, an interesting question. If there is a certain monitoring system for HTA agencies, on how would rely on the outcome of this is credible. I don't know, Muna, are you there? Do you want to jump to see? Because I want to hear. We have someone who is leading an agency, an agency in Tunisia that did a very great work in the last years, but from my point of view, there is still no monitoring system. And in HTA Policy Forum this year, we discussed the value and impact of HTA, that it's meaning this. If the HTA is valuable for the healthcare system where it is placed, and well, we didn't reach any agreement, and it might come a proposal with some topics to be considered. But if we have someone from an HTA agency, I would like to hear that perspective, because I'm not an HTA agency representative anymore. I don't know, we have Muna. Otherwise,
you have one hand.
I have one hand. Okay, I'm not seeing the people, but yes.
Hand charter.
Thank you. I would like to ask how the discovery by high throughput sequencing that we may find when doing genomic may be considered as also another challenge when we're doing health technology assessment. I mean, the value of new discoveries as the techniques are now going toward being more and more with more and more insight, bringing more and more insight and discoveries when doing these tests. This is my first question, and then I would like to ask you if you can share the article you spoke about with the group of European.
The HECO PerMed, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes, yeah, I'm gonna share, because the HECO PerMed, it's also it's a group that continues working, and it's doing some initiatives. I'm looking right now the web page. So I'm copying in the chat right now.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
And regarding your first question, I wasn't sure if I capture.
Okay. Basically, I'm a medical biologist in genetics from Institute Pasteur de Tunis, and also I have a master's degree in health economics. So this is my thinking about how HTA and in assessing or in doing appraisal for precision medicine or genomic implementation of genomic testing, we can assess this point of discoveries also of new variants or any new finding for the society and for tackling diseases. I don't know if you get the question. Or...
Yeah. Now I get the point. So, So one of the approach could be something uses in the disease modeling approach. So you can tackle a disease modeling approach. This is mostly created for public health domains or for infectious diseases, but it might be applied because you are trying to provide some kind of conceptualization early in the development stage. And other element is incorporating the clinical domains at the time of clinical trial, and how this the economic domains at the time of clinical trial. So meaning how this cost incurred by the therapy, but also to see if improves efficiencies into the healthcare system, improves efficiencies in the patient triage, in the patient pathway, in the patient basically resource use utilization. I don't know if I've solved everything that question.
Yes, thank you. It's part of the challenges now facing technology assessment and precision medicine.
This is because it's not being considered early in the stage. Most of these points are done at the time of the report when you have the clinical trial. But if you can provide some early economic considerations, might help the assessment and the appraisal process.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. We have another one. They say, do you think that PM technologies developing companies needs to engage more to facilitate access to such for low to middle income countries? So yes, I think that technology should be available for everybody. So it's not a high income country issue. And I'm not sure if the cost effectiveness assessment strategy might work, but this is more a sustainability question. It's more a sustainability solution. So I think technologies companies could engage with donors to make especially to donors or with private sector additional funding organizations and government, basically to point out that there is a need and the company has a solution, and getting funding to reduce the burden for this healthcare system, to have some kind of funding. Of course, I'm speaking beyond the pricing issue or the discounts. This is how to make a sustainable access solution. Specifically, you can get support from organizations like Gates Foundations, like the World Bank, the European Development Bank. Now WHO is creating a partnership with the European Development Bank to create a health fund, or in specific, it's like a WHO bank. It's a financial initiative basically, and I'm not fully aware and don't bear 100% on this, but it's to support countries that are challenging in getting access to certain products to support with the affordability strategies. Okay. How to measure patient needs or incorporating intangible values. So this is something ongoing. And we all say we need to incorporate the societal perspective or beyond the patient value. But we might start incorporating this from the clinical trial perspective, measuring most patient preferences. So this is patient outcomes, patient-reported outcomes, but not only patient-reported outcomes. We need to start asking the caregivers about some perceptions on some domains, and patient and caregiver preferences incorporated in the clinical trial. That's one point. And after the clinical trial or in the HTA processes, how this could be incorporated? Well, is being open to incorporate the patient voice, the patient perspective into this appraisal, basically. So asking patient questions about the technology, how this technology might affect or change their disease, and if they see that provides an additional benefit with the current standard of care of the current therapy that they are incorporated or they are available in the country or in the setting where this assessment is being carried out. So this is how incorporate the perspective. How to incorporate these intangible needs is unsolved, because to measure the societal value, it includes working with the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Economy or Ministry of Production. So it's not only a healthcare question, it's a society question and should be addressed in a multifactorial approach. So some groups are working right now on defining some methodologies to determine helping governments or helping assessors on how to measure these elements or how to point more tangible these tangible elements. One of these is the generalized cost effectiveness analysis. Is a specific technique that considers that the drug might become off patent and generalized in a period of time. So this is at this time the drug reduced the prices and it changed the cost-effective perspective. Other frameworks incorporate most the value of information, which is another economic elicitation process as well. Okay.
I think we have arrived to the end of the webinar. I can see more questions.
I'm not seeing more. Let me see if someone share a paper. I'm gonna read. No, I don't see any raise or any other questions in the chat.
Then thank you very much, Ramiro. It was been a pleasure to have you with us. And thank you to all the participants for this participation. Thank you.
Thank you. And they are asking if my slides could be shared. Yes, my slides could be shared with attendance. There is no issue with this.
Thank you very much. You can send me and then I can send to
I
the
will do
participants.
that. Thank you so much and show the rest of the day.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much to all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Hmm.
Thank you. Bye-bye.